Why wouldn't I attempt a 260 kilo PR deadlift on a day where I've come off a night shift? You know, you guys know the story. 5 hours sleep, not a lot of food at all. I haven't really eaten in the last 12 hours. But this is kind of the recipe for me in recent times to break PRs. So the last two PRs that I've kind of set, the 250 kilo deadlift and the 210 kilo squat, have been set on days where I felt crap. So I think a few weeks now it's been since I've hit that 250. So I haven't really deadlifted at all. I've kind of attacked the back extensions really heavily. So I've kind of avoided squatting altogether because of that. But I thought I've come off a night shift. I haven't done back extensions for a couple of days now in an attempt to kind of wash away some of that fatigue that I've accumulated with doing, daily freaking back extensions. So I thought today was a good day to kind of give it a go. I started off the session with some reverse lunges. That's kind of been, I don't think I've talked much about that in recent videos, but that's kind of been on my mind in recent times. I do want to get back to some unilateral leg work. Last time I ran this type of block with unilateral leg work, I did Bulgarian split squats, and they were good for a moment. But like always, like I have a goal with these blocks, and the goal for that block was quad hypertrophy or quad strength as well. I kind of identified that my deadlift and my squat had a similar kind of sticking point, which was that 90-degree knee bend. So breaking the weight off the floor in the deadlift, and that middle kind of section of the squat on the way up, both kind of similar hip and knee angles. So I kind of identified that, and I thought Bulgarian split squats was really good for that. And so I ran with it for a little bit back then. Got some really kind of good feedback from that. What I found was that these Bulgarian split squats were not hitting my quads at all. That was my goal at the time. What I found was that it was smashing the living hell out of my lateral hip. So glute minimus and max and medius were being toasted with these Bulgarian split squats. So to my surprise, I kind of moved away from it because it wasn't serving the purpose. This time around, I've kind of reintroduced it with the knowledge of this is a lateral hip movement. Even though my torso is kind of a bit more upright than in a squat, I guess, maybe kind of similar, it really hits the lateral hip. And so I think I need lateral hip work, and today was definitely a lesson in that. I worked up to a 60 kilo set of 5 with these reverse lunges, and after midway through the set, my lateral hips started cramping, literally cramping, so severely cramping that I had trouble sitting around for like a good couple of minutes after the fact. And even when I dropped the weight down to 40 kilos and did 5 sets of 5 with that weight, man, my hips were just spasming, which goes to show that I'm not really good with that lateral hip strength at all. I've completely neglected it. I don't do anything in the sagittal plane, in the frontal plane rather. I do everything in the sagittal plane. So all my movements are bilateral. I do deadlifts, bilateral. I do squats, bilateral. I do bench press, again, bilateral. So I don't really do any motion kind of, in the frontal plane. So, it's been on my mind for a little while. I don't think, and I made definitely a bunch of videos during that block when I was experimenting with Bulgarian split squats. I made some, really good discoveries. I did some research, and basically all athleticism is based upon internal hip rotation. And one of the best ways to develop hip internal rotation is through unilateral leg work. I brought up a couple of stories from the NBA guys. You guys know that I follow the NBA religiously. Grew up on the thing. And the NBA is kind of heating up again, and that's kind of what brought back some of these thoughts about unilateral leg work. I spoke in that, a few months ago when I did that block. I spoke about Zach LaVine. Now, if you guys don't know who Zach LaVine is, he's a superstar for the Chicago Bulls at the moment, and he's a very, very athletic player. He's probably got some of the best athleticism ever. And definitely, one of the best athletes we have in the NBA. He's a incredible jumper of 1 foot, and he's not a slouch of 2 feet either. He's won the NBA dunk contest a few times, I think, and he's an incredible athlete. He develops such quick power. He doesn't have a lot of knee bend. He just elevates effortlessly. I think he's like 6'6", 6'7", or something like this. So he's quite a tall fella. And so I remember one video that I saw of him. It was like a off-season video, and he was talking about the exercises that he uses to develop his athleticism. And he said that his dad made him do a lot of lunging, a lot of kind of split squat, stance, jumping. And so that kind of planted the seed during that time, during the block, to kind of experiment with the Bulgarian split squats. And what I found was, and also once again today, with these damn lateral hip cramps, is that I have such a deficiency in the lateral hip. At the time when I did the block, the unilateral kind of with the Bulgarian split squat block, my intentions were different. I wasn't after hip internal rotation. That was kind of like a byproduct. What I wanted is it was quad strength, because I had this difficulty of breaking the bar off the floor in the deadlift. So I thought more quads, easier break of the floor. So I kind of moved away from it. Now that I'm doing a lot of these hyper extensions or these back extensions, once again, it's another bilateral hip movement. It's a beautiful movement and I definitely love it, but I can't do it every single day. I want to start loading the hyper extensions, kind of similar to what Klokov did. He puts the barbell on his back, kind of like in a back squat position, and he does the GHD kind of stuff. But you can also do it in a hyper. I think in the hyper it's a little bit easier for you than in a GHD. So I'm planning to kind of load that movement, which means I can't do it every single day. And so in between, on those off days for hypers, I'm planning to do some unilateral leg work, especially what I've experienced today. These cramps, these this weakness that I have. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to have this much discrepancy between bilateral and unilateral leg strength. So that's kind of what's on my mind. And so when I went to the squats, I was quite surprised and quite pleasantly surprised to feel really, really stable in the squat. I don't know why that is. Maybe that's the case of putting your lateral hip on the map, all that musculature, minimus, medius, maybe the TFL as well, the hip flexors, putting all those on the map. Or it's also probably a product of the fact that when you're doing these reverse lunges or these split squats, you are essentially stretching the hip flexor while strengthening the opposite glute. So, it's a really good mobility movement. You guys know the knees over toes guy, he swears by it. He swears by the split squats. Maybe that's what's happening here as well. Especially when you load that movement, it kind of just opens your hips up. So when you go to the bilateral squats, like I'm doing here, it just feels really, really good. So maybe this is something I should implement. I don't know where in the workout I want to put it in. On workouts where I want to push the weight, where I want to kind of go for a 220 kilo squat or something along those lines, I think priming the central nervous system with the pin squat is still the way to go. I still have had the most success doing that. But I think as an accessory kind of back off movement, I could probably do some of these split squats, reverse lunges. Having that said, what I've already said today about how good it feels to squat after split squats, don't know how I can coexist both pin squats and split squats, mouthful, both kind of in the lead up to the squat. Maybe that's a bit too much work to do leading up to a heavy squat session. So something to consider, something to think about, but I definitely want to kind of include that exercise. I feel like it's really cheap. It's really cheap. There's not a lot of weight on your back, although I can almost guarantee it, I'm going to be very, very sore tomorrow because of these reverse lunges. This cramping that I'm getting now after the session, that means that my central nervous system is freaked out, and probably there's been a lot of muscular, disruption. There's probably going to be DOMS, basically. And so after I did all of that, after I did the squatting routine, I didn't want to do any back off sets because you guys know on these light days, on these days where I don't have a lot of food in my belly or a lot of sleep in me, I like to just hit the heavy stuff, heavy singles, and then run out. So no metabolic stress at all. That's what I like to do on these poor resourced days, if you will. So decided to deadlift. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to be able to hit a PR. Worked up to 220. 220 I felt moved well. So I thought, let's throw another wheel on and have a go at 260. I decided to skip 240, 250, and just go straight for 260. It's a big jump from 220 to 260. But what am I going to do? Go to 250 and hit it again? There's no point in that. Might as well give a PR a go. This whole week I've done a whole lot of hypers. And for me to come in on a day like this to hit a PR on a deadlift, very, very surprising that would be. So I was skeptical. I decided to throw another wheel on and give it a good go. As long as I have integrity through the trunk, through my core, I was going to pull. The moment I feel a loss of integrity and the weight still stapled to the floor, I was going to give up. So I decided to give it a bit of a fight, but not a full fight. I didn't want to wrestle the weight up and sacrifice my spine, especially with, the last how many days of back extensions. These back extensions are good, don't get me wrong, but deadlifting in the midst of all these repetitions with the back extensions is probably not a great idea. There's just way too much fatigue. So I don't know. Maybe tomorrow I'll skip back extensions as well. So yesterday I didn't do them. Today I didn't do them. Maybe tomorrow I'll skip them again. So I try and wash away all of that fatigue that I've accumulated. And then I'll kind of go alternate days with split squats and hyper extensions. I think those two movements complement each other really well. Sagittal plane, frontal plane, really kind of good, cheap exercise. Gets a lot of volume in the hip region to try and balance out what's happening there. The lumbar back is feeling really good. I feel like a proper farmer. I feel like a baby farmer. I think all those reps that I've done with the hypers have kind of, done something. I think there's a bit more GPP in that posterior chain. If you're not deadlifting, if you're not rack pulling, if you're not doing, those heavy exercises on a regular basis, you need to do something. And I think back extensions is probably the best, regular exercise to do on a squat everyday program, because I've said this many times in the past. It is so freaking hard to coexist the squat with the deadlift. It is just, I don't know. I've attempted to do that many different times, and always kind of get burnt out and worn out. So if you're going to push the squats, something has to give, and that thing is the deadlift. However, the back extensions, these hypers, and I guess the GHDs as well, they're really cheap. There's no spinal loading, there's no axial loading, and there's also kind of like a decompression component when you go down as well. This is why I've been able to hit them every day. They just feel really good. So this is a 260 kilo deadlift. It didn't get off the ground. I think I got 5 of the 6 plates kind of nudged off the ground, but I couldn't get the last one off. I think it's a pretty good goal. That fella there in the background, he's a subscriber. We were talking about this, whether I should go 260 or not. I said to him, let me just have a little go. I've never touched this weight in the past. So let me have it a good go, because that's kind of what I did in the past as well. I've played around with 240 before I hit it. I think I played around with 250. Maybe I've never touched 250 in the past, but anyway, here it is. Oh, can't do it. Now I've had to go at 260. So 260 is kind of in the oven, if you will. Got to cook it up. And maybe in the next few weeks I'll be able to get 260. It depends on how crazy I go after the posterior chain. But definitely I have to wash away some of this fatigue that I've accumulated on the hyper extensions. All right, guys. I'm going to try and recover. Try and have a good sleep. Lots of food. And then tomorrow I'll have a proper freaking workout without all these disruptions. All right, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.